Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the 2022 Tigard Chamber State of Business Program. I'm Debbie Mollahan, and I'm the CEO of the Tigard Chamber. Today, you will see presentations on the economy, the labor market, as well as the entrepreneur climate, small business resources, and access to capital from a great cadre of speakers. We hope this information helps you navigate more easily through the challenges and opportunities in 2022. As you may know, programs like this are not possible without the support of sponsors. With that, I'd like to take a moment and recognize our sponsors. Our presenting sponsor for the second year in a row is Columbia Bank. Columbia Bank is a Northwest community bank headquartered in Tacoma, Washington, with comprehensive solutions and expertise to meet the evolving needs of business and individuals. We have 7 additional supporting sponsors. Returning for a second year as supporting sponsor is Vantage Point HR. The remainder of our supporting sponsors for this year's program include Edge One Media, Inman Financial Services, Tigard Real Estate, West Coast Business Communications, Beltrans Properties Group, and Portland General Electric. Before we get into our program and an introduction of our first speaker, there are a few things to note. This program will be recorded and available in our webinar library. Questions will be held and taken at the end of the last presentation and should be submitted via the Q&A function in the Zoom webinar. I will introduce each speaker prior to their presentation. Lastly, I encourage you to refer to our eZine downloadable PDF program that was emailed to you that gives you an overview of today's program, speakers, and sponsors. Our first speaker will be Peter Hulsman with an economic trends and forecast presentation. Peter is the city economist for the city of Portland and previously worked at Portland State University's Northwest Economic Research Center, where he held the role of senior economist and provided economic policy and macroeconomic analysis, forecasting, and demographic modeling for clients. Peter has also served as an adjunct faculty member teaching economics courses at Portland State and has served on the Bureau of Development Services Finance Committee for the past 4 years. Peter received his Bachelor of Arts in Mathematics from the University of Portland and his Master of Sciences in Economics from Portland State University. Peter, please take it away.
Awesome, thank you. Let me share my screen. Thanks for the nice introduction, Debbie. All right, give me 1 sec to get this set up. All right, hopefully you see that and not my notes. So I'm going to run you through a brief economic update. Since I only have 20 minutes, it's disproportionately going to be focused on inflation. And so there'll be a few slides that kind of seemingly aren't connected. They will be connected when I start the inflation discussion in a bit. And it's a little bit death by charts, so I apologize in advance. First up this is consumer spending in the Portland Metro. And it might be somewhat surprising, but it is considerably up. This, as you can see, I think we're close to 30% above where we were in January of 2020. There are a couple of notes I want to make about this. First up, just because spending is up doesn't mean it's necessarily staying within the Portland Metro. A lot of this is on online goods and not services, where we typically, that's kind of what we associate with small businesses and staying in the area. Well, with the pandemic and the shift to more goods purchasing and dependency on online marketplaces, a lot of this money is not necessarily staying in the Portland Metro. Next, and I'm only going to briefly touch on the labor market because Liza is going to go into more depth, but there's a lot of weirdness going on. First, on the left chart shows the number of job openings and vacancies. This is at an all-time high. And the second chart on the right shows the number of quits, also at an all-time high. What this indicates is, for a variety of reasons, people looking for jobs have a lot more bargaining power than previously, and it's really tight, and it's been very difficult for people to fill open vacancies. Also worth noting is that the pandemic accelerated the number of people retiring. And so we had 1.5 million people above expected retiring in the nation as a whole. And so you get this sort of where those jobs opened up, you get people jumping to those jobs, creating more job openings in lower level positions. Because typically speaking, when you retire, it's kind of at the peak of your career and peak job title and all that sort of thing. And so those jobs open up, people move into them. And we really have this dynamic where there's a lot of open jobs, specifically in leisure and hospitality and sectors along those lines, where they're really having a tough time filling. Finally, supply chain problems. And this is, so to talk about the supply chain problems, you have to really kind of put it in context of the pandemic. And so what happened at the beginning of the pandemic is a number of companies basically, they saw the recession coming, and they made the decision to kind of cut back on production, anticipating recessionary behavior where you would see a drop in consumer spending, which is, I showed previously, never really happened. And so when they pull back, these supply chains, they take up to 2 years for like semiconductor manufacturing, for example. And to get that restarted is no simple thing. Add in the fact that a number of nations in the global supply chain shut down, like in Southeast Asia and the like, and it creates this logjam at a number of ports. And you can see on the right graph, which is container ships anchored off of the port of LA and Long Beach, that makes up 40% of the maritime imports to the US. And it's at an all-time high. There's great videos on, if you look it up, of just like a zoom over off the shore, and just tons of container ships just sitting there docked because they can't offload them fast enough. They're at 24/7, like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're working to get it, and they still, there's a number of problems. One, finding people to offload them, and two, finding truck drivers, because you have to, get each container onto a truck to get it out. And it's been very difficult. And what all this has led to is extremely high shipping costs, because people are trying to get their goods to market, and it's the logjam at a variety of different areas has created this, where we're seeing this in inflation. And so the three previous graphs that I showed that I kind of rushed through tell you, one, that spending is up significantly, and specifically on goods. Two, that we can't really get goods to market because of all the supply chain issues, which means that there's a lot of money chasing not very many goods, and this is going to cause inflation. There's many more factors to this, one being the labor market problems, where, for example, restaurants are having a very difficult time hiring people, so they have to raise prices and wages then prices, to account for this and to make a profit. And so all this together is leading to inflation growth. And then if you go down into the details, you'll see it's in used car prices are going up significantly. Well, that's semiconductors, and the chips needed for cars is actually causing that rise. And then and the lack of new car production. And then there's gas prices for a variety of reasons. But all in all, it can be really tied into the supply chain problems and the difficulties in the labor market. And so right now we're at about 7% for the CPIU West region, which is all the states that make up the west of the US, including Hawaii and Alaska. That is an all-time, not an all-time high, but it's at a recent historic high, and a high for this particular data series. So that kind of covers the fundamental drivers of why inflation has been high. There's a behavioral aspect to inflation, and it's that if people expect inflation is going to be higher, they will set prices and negotiate wages to those higher expectations. It becomes this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, where because businesses expect higher prices, they raise their prices, which then means that the prices are higher in the next cycle, because there's always a time lag for these sorts of things. And right now, there's a number of measures that economists use for tracking expected inflation. And this one is the consumer's expected inflation. This is a survey that the University of Michigan does. And it's basically just asking you, today, what do you expect inflation will be 12 months from now? Like what % growth do you think there will be? And it's, as you would expect, probably, they're seeing 7% inflation. They expect it to be high next year as well. They expect 6% inflation, which is significant, especially if they're making pricing and wage negotiation differences. The next question is, just because consumers see that, is that actually what the market is seeing? And this is a different view of inflation expectations. This is what investors see. And the way we get this is we look at the difference in treasury yields over different periods of time, because the treasury yield is basically made up of risk premium and expected inflation. And if you have an estimate for the risk premium, you can figure out what investors use in their models for inflation expectations. This has not risen nearly as significantly as the consumer expectations, which tells you that Wall Street they're kind of buying the fundamental argument of inflation, that the supply chain issues are going to clear up, that consumer spending is going to shift back more to services, and that yes, there will be a little bit of wage inflation, which we'll talk about, but that'll be a one-time thing. It's not going to be an ongoing, constant problem. So in a way, investors are a little bit more optimistic about the inflation scenario than consumers are right now. On to the wage inflation portion. Wage inflation is because inflation's been so high, workers are going to start asking for higher wages to get compensated. Some of this is built into contracts through cost of living adjustments. And some of this is just simply bargaining in a very tight marketplace, which we're having right now for labor. They're going to ask for higher wages. And there's again, this is a timing issue. Right now, businesses, before inflation really comes in, it's not like the wages jump up immediately. So a lot of larger businesses are actually making kind of a disproportionate amount of profit because they can raise prices, but not actually raise wages. What's going to happen in the next year, and this is larger businesses more than smaller businesses. Smaller businesses have a tougher time in this marketplace. What's going to happen in the next year is that's going to start eating into those corporate profits as larger businesses and the like have to negotiate and account for inflation in their wage agreements. This should be a one-time driver of inflation, and so it's if the first few slides, if you are a believer in the fact that the supply chain issues are going to clear up, that we're going to have the consumer spending shift more towards services as the economies open up, and if you believe that the labor market's going to loosen a little bit, the last few slides, inflation expectations and wage inflation, kind of tell you that it's going to, like, there's a residual where we're not going to get back to 2% inflation immediately. There's going to be a period of adjustment that the Federal Reserve is currently trying to combat with very strong signaling of raising interest rates and the like. Just to dig in a little bit deeper and bring it closer to home in terms of wage growth, this is the number of jobs by wage bucket in the Portland metro region. And as you can see, the top one is the above median income, the red line is above median income, and that's above the people who, there's more jobs now paying above median than previously. Like that bucket has grown since the beginning of the pandemic, whereas the below median income has basically stagnated. It dropped once, leisure and hospitality, a lot of restaurants, that sort of thing, no longer have business, and it's never really recovered. And this is not unique to Portland. This is, you see this across the nation. And there are a number of reasons for this. And one of it is, like I mentioned previously, with the retirees and, higher wage jobs opening up. You can point to, and I'm going to leave some of this for Liza to cover, but there's a number of reasons why these bottom tier jobs, not bottom tier, but bottom wage jobs, lower wage jobs haven't recovered. And they will start to, and that is also going to guide the wageflation discussion. This is time at work, shopping, and restaurants in the Portland metro region as well. And again, starting January 2020, and we are down significantly. So if the first slide showed consumer spending, this slide shows that it's not a lot of it is happening at the places that we typically associate with on the ground local businesses, and that is restaurants and retail and the like. So people aren't spending nearly as much time outside the home. And so this is an indicator for me in terms of looking at how many people are going back into the economy in kind of the typical way of, restaurants, walking around downtown, going shopping, and things along those lines. And finally, quick glance ahead. This is, so just looking to 2022, the Wall Street Journal has a survey of economists where they ask them a series of questions. And basically they're trying to get a consensus, or the median economist, to pick out what they think is going to happen for the next year. In terms of inflation, which is the year-over-year CPI growth, they expect it to decline significantly to 2.64%. And that is telling you that they buy the fundamentals argument. There'll be some sort of residual in terms of inflation expectations and wageflation kind of pushing it up a little bit, but they think the Federal Reserve will get it under control. And by the end of 2022, inflation will be much closer to the target of 2%. They also continue to forecast a very tight labor market, unemployment rate below 4%, which is basically all-time high, and full year GDP growth to be about 3.6%. That is high, but again, it's coming from a low base. And so it's probably a little bit above kind of the normal long run growth of the economy. GDP just came in today, and it was, I think, close to 6% year over year. The state forecast from the Oregon Office of Economic Analysis has us adding back 80,000 jobs and basically getting back to the pre-pandemic level of employment. And then the long-term effects from the pandemic that economists are going to be tracking and really kind of determine basically if we're going to have a new sort of economy, or in what ways our economy is going to be fundamentally different from how it was previously. And the two that we get brought up a lot are work from home, how that's going to affect downtown areas in urban settings, because a lot of urban restaurants and the like are supported by people going out to lunch, going shopping on their way to and from work. And if they're working from home, that activity is no longer going to be there. And so how much of the work from home it is going to be a fundamental change that where, maybe 10% more people are now working from home than previously, that would have a significant impact on the economy. And so it's not necessarily a binary thing, like 1 or 0. It's a question of how much is this actually going to change behavior. And some firms don't like it, and everyone will be back in the office, but some won't. And that marginal difference is going to have an effect. And there's going to be an adjustment period as we figure out what that means for the economy. Next is commercial real estate. And for basically the same reason, there's a lot of questions around office space and the demand for office space, and a lot of uncertainty for how retail office space, specifically those two, are in a lot of urban areas is going to recover. And when there's uncertainty, there's a lack of investment. And so we're seeing basically no growth in those two areas. And we probably won't until we get a little bit more certainty around what those two marketplaces are going to look like. Next, the next question is this the beginning of structural shifts in the labor market? Do people, after going through the pandemic, are priorities now shifting such that work-life balance is more important, or they like beyond just the work from home? Is there going to be a shift away from work in certain sectors, or is this just a one-time thing for a variety of reasons? And then lastly, is there going to be any fundamental changes in consumer preferences? And one could be movement from urban to rural, which is one of the things that we've seen in the Portland metro region and a number of other urban areas and metropolitan regions. You kind of get a move away from urban cores to suburbs. And that makes sense from just like thinking about it, because you want more space if you're going to be at home all day. You probably want a little bit more space and perhaps a yard and things along those lines. And a lot of the amenities of the urban areas, like parks and being close to a whole bunch of restaurants and things along those lines, goes away when you can't actually do that. But is this actually more indicative of a permanent change? Is this something that consumers actually are going to stick to and they want to happen? Similarly, when we travel, one thing we've seen is that there's been a lot more travel to rural areas as opposed to urban areas. And the city of Portland, no exception. A lot of people will fly in to the port, whereas port travel is not back to where it was, but has recovered significantly. But city of Portland hotels haven't seen that recovery, whereas a lot of outlying areas based off of rental car usage have. And then let me see, and you can, there's a number of other questions of is the shift from goods to, or from services to goods, is that also a more permanent thing? Likely not, but it's something that we need to pay attention to. And that is all I got. I don't even think I was close to my 20 minutes, but I'll let it go to the next person.
Thank you, Peter. You're actually right on schedule. And in listening to your presentation, I can see that what's driving the economy is a wide variety of factors, and it's really complex. And there's not like the magic bullet that's going to make it all better. And there's things we can control and things that we can't control. But it's really interesting to see. I find it encouraging that at least investors feel like some of these things we're going to move through, and things will get back to like normal, at least from an economic perspective, but there's still these trends that we're really going to have to kind of wait and see what happens, because we're not done with the pandemic and we don't really know how that's going to influence things. So there's that layer of complexity. Now we're going to talk about how complicated the labor market is and what is driving all the different things heating up in the labor market. So with that, we're going to hear from Dr. Liza Moorhead. And Liza is a research and data analyst with Work Systems, Inc. She has expertise in applied research and public policy analysis in a variety of areas, including labor market economics, urban planning, public policy analysis. Some recent projects include a labor market analysis of the training and occupational development needs resulting from a projected increase in transportation electrification in Oregon, as well as an analysis of the impact of COVID-19 economic crisis on demographic and socioeconomic affinity groups. So Liza, please take it away.
Hey, Debbie, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So today I'm going to be talking about what we're seeing in the labor market and focusing mostly on workers. And then at the end, I'll talk a little bit about what we're seeing as far as businesses and how they're responding to this. And what Peter and Debbie mentioned about complexity really encapsulates what we're seeing. So I'll be talking about workers. Where have they gone? Which is, everyone's big question. Focusing on changing demographics of the workforce, workers on the sidelines, and workers who are forging new paths. And then I'll talk a little bit about how some employers are able to respond with wages, bonuses, and benefits, and innovation. So I'm going to talk about changing population demographics. And with all the things that I'm talking about today and all the things we're seeing in the labor market, we're seeing a combination of trends that are caused by COVID, trends that are complicated by COVID, and trends that would have happened regardless of COVID.
Liza, can I stop you for a second? We're not seeing your screen if you're screen sharing.
Oh dear. Okay, let me. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. So looking at demographics of the workforce, starting with the working age population, and this is something we were hearing about before COVID, and this is something that would be affecting the labor market regardless of COVID. And that is that the working age population in the United States is shrinking. There are fewer people age 16 or 18 to 64 than there used to be. And that's something we're going to continue to see. Now, the way that that's been exacerbated by COVID is something Peter mentioned, is that COVID really increased the rate of retirement. In other recessions, we saw people holding off on retirement if they were lucky enough to have a job, keeping that job longer. But COVID, because of the health relationship, was different. So we saw a lot more people retiring maybe earlier than they would have. And now half of adults age 55 and older are retired. And of course, that goes up as the age gets older. So more people being pulling themselves out of the workforce. Then we have this big group, workers on the sidelines. And this is a narrative that's getting more complicated. For a year or more, there was a pretty strong narrative that workers weren't participating in the labor force because they were getting these extra federal and state benefits. But now those benefits have gone away and we're still seeing fewer workers. And there are a couple of reasons for that. The first is, which I don't have a slide for, has to do with just COVID itself. There's some interesting new research from Brookings that looks at the workers who died of COVID, the workers who, in addition to people dying of COVID, there have also been people who died maybe earlier than they would have because they weren't able to access medical care for COVID-related reasons, not being able to or not wanting to go into the doctor. And then there are all the workers who have long-haul COVID. So research is showing us that out of the 100 million workers in the United States who have had COVID, about a third of those workers have long-haul symptoms. And that can really complicate their ability to be present in the labor force full-time, or even be present in the labor force at all. Childcare, again, is a big one. I think this one is resonating with people who maybe don't have young children within the last month more than it has. You know, initially at the start of the pandemic, public schools were closed, childcare centers were closed, parents were really scrambling. And that lasted all of last year. A lot of public schools were closed. There weren't those places, the schools, the after-school programs to send children. And that massively impacted the ability of caregivers to participate in the labor force. And now what we're seeing is that even though these schools are open, there are students being sent home to quarantine. There are entire classes being quarantined. In January, we were on pins and needles all month. I have 2 young children waiting to see if their schools would close, if we needed to take 2 weeks off work. And so for a lot of people, they haven't been able to participate at all or as fully in the labor market because of ongoing childcare issues. And we always talk about childcare. It's all caregiving, you know, adult centers for the elderly or adults with disabilities. They also haven't been as available. And then there are family members caring for others who might be having those long haul COVID symptoms. We're also looking at foreign workers and immigration, or rather the absence of foreign workers and immigration. Over the past 4 years, there's been a pretty dramatic decrease in how often the United States is issuing visas for foreign workers. That affects highly skilled doctors and engineers. It also affects the people who come to harvest crops, people who come in the summer to work at amusement parks. There are a lot of industries that rely on foreign workers, and either because of their own concerns with COVID or changing immigration policies in the United States, those workers aren't here. So that is also an absence of workers. And then there's the issue of the pipeline. During COVID, a lot of students delayed education. Schools were closed. People who didn't have access to technology or high-speed internet, people who were providing childcare, other care at home, were not able to do the training and education that they might have. So this chart shows enrollment in community colleges in Oregon, the drop between fall of 2019 to fall of 2020. And we saw a pretty dramatic decrease here in our region. Portland Community College enrollment down 21%, Clackamas Community College down 29%. And even though these numbers are starting to rise now, these are workers who in the past couple of years didn't go through, didn't get the training, didn't get the certification. And so now they're not entering the workforce the way they would have. Some of them still will, but some of them won't. And the capacity of the educational institutions isn't necessarily getting larger to accommodate that. So there's always going to be that dip. And then in addition to the community college enrollment, we've also seen a lot of schools in our region close in the last 5-10 years. So we're looking at a lot of the for-profit training schools close, ITT Tech, DeVry, schools like that, that provided a lot of the certified nursing assistants. Those training programs don't exist anymore. We also saw Marylhurst and Concordia close, and those schools were big sources of teachers and nurses. And those closures had nothing to do with COVID, but happening at the same time, they have really interrupted the ability of some of those employers to find the workers that they might have expected. And then there's something that Peter mentioned, which is workers forging new paths. One of the things that we've seen, and we've definitely, I think, talked about a lot, is people deciding to leave their jobs. And this is happening for a variety of reasons. This is the quits rate. In Oregon, we're seeing large numbers of people, 3-4% each month of the workforce quitting their jobs. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're dropping out of the labor force. A lot of these people are leaving for new or what they consider better jobs, or just something new, in a time when there are so many things that we can't control. Being able to feel in control of just about anything is pretty attractive. But we're also seeing people leave to start new businesses. There's been a really marked increase in new business formation, and a lot of these businesses are starting without any employees aside from the founder, and maybe in 2, 5, 10 years they will be large employers or small employers. But for now, we're seeing people strike out on their own and try new things. We're also seeing people take a temporary or a permanent step back from the labor force. The labor force participation rate in Oregon peaked at just about 70%. And these are people who are either are working age and are either working or actively looking for work. And now it's dropped down to just about 63%. So a lot of people are stepping back. Some people have, decided to stay home and care for children. Some people have decided to focus on other things, going back to school and retraining. And it'll be a little while until we see how this shakes out. Part of this has to do with families being able to, there are more families who can survive on one income than there were before. And with so many things with school and with work being up in the air, more families are deciding, maybe for now or maybe permanently we'll make this switch and try something different. Although the higher wages are also going to be more an incentive for people to go back to work. So what does all of this mean for employers? So the two things we're looking at with how employers can respond to this, the first is wages, bonuses, and benefits. We're seeing sign-on bonuses are the largest one, which is, not available to every business, but we're seeing $3,500 sign-on bonus for a school bus driver, $1,000 sign-on bonus to be a package sorter, $1,000 to be a cook. There in the paper recently, they were talking about $10,000 sign-on bonuses for some nurses and up to $25,000 sign-on bonuses for Portland police officers, although that doesn't seem to have been very effective. Some of the other things we're seeing is bonuses that come later. So the Rose Quarter just announced that they are going to be paying bonuses at the end of the season for concession workers. So if you get a job working there and you make it to the end, you get a retroactive pay increase. And that is a really strong incentive for people to stop looking, just spend some time helping them get through the busy season. Another thing we're seeing is changes in requirements. So this ad is for drivers, and they're advertising right in the title of their job posting, we're not going to test you for marijuana. Not everyone's going to make that choice, but looking at the substitute teacher shortage in Beaverton and Portland Public Schools, we saw an increase in wages for those jobs. And we also saw in Portland that they said, you know what? Substitute teachers don't really need to have a college degree. We're going to waive that for now. We're going to change the requirement because it's more important for us to get workers in than to maintain that standard. So a lot of people are looking at employment and saying, this is the standard we use. Is this right? Is this still appropriate? Is it more important to keep our schools open and find people who might do a great job, but don't have this specific accreditation? And for the time being, they decided it was. And then the last thing we're seeing is innovation. Right now, businesses are having to look at the way they operate and say, okay, how can we do things differently? And this is something that's obviously been happening for the past 2 years. Everyone has gotten a crash course in innovation. So these pictures are examples of working from home. I wasn't allowed to work from home until March of 2020. And then I wasn't allowed to go into my office for a year and a half. And it didn't seem like that would work. There was a lot of resistance across the board, but it has. And now we know that we don't need, centralized offices. There are different ways to get things done. And maybe that means not all of our employees need to live here. Maybe we can hire people who live in different parts of the country or different parts of the world, and we can still communicate effectively. Telemedicine is a big one. It's incredibly difficult for people in rural areas to get healthcare often, and we're seeing that more and more because there is a large healthcare worker shortage, but people can get some of the healthcare they need remotely. So that's a huge benefit. As far as hospitality industry, and if you can see the picture in the corner is a robot cooking French fries, which is a job I had in high school. I'm sure other people here had in high school. Not a great job. I don't really want to have it now. Perfectly happy that a robot can do that. At the bottom, there is a robot delivering meals to people. I think that's something we'll see a little bit. What I've seen the most in my daily life is the change in restaurants from waitresses, waiters, hostesses to counter service. This picture in the bottom is a restaurant that I went to last week. It was a really nice restaurant. Really good food, pretty expensive. And there was a time when you would have gone in, waited to be seated by a hostess, have a designated waiter or waitress come to your table really often. But they don't do that anymore. There aren't people to do that anymore. So there is counter service, and it was great. This is still a great experience. It just didn't matter. So these are all ways that we've already found to look at the core purpose of the business and say, how are different ways that we can do this? So that was a lot of broad information in a pretty quick period of time. I encourage anyone who has questions to please get in touch with me if you have questions about specifics with your industry or any of your labor market needs, I'd be happy to go through them. Thank you.
So thank you, Liza. That, again, like the economy, the labor market has really complex drivers. There's certain things that we can control and certain things we can't. I think the thing I found interesting is that not only are we kind of like competing with each other in like industries for employees, but now we're also competing with a bunch more new businesses that are launching that we probably previously didn't have to experience, and the pandemic's been driving that. And it really, I think, challenges us. We need to be creative as an employer. And when I looked at those statistics on the drop in enrollment for like the community colleges, one of the things that struck me is that maybe as employers, we need to say, okay, well, you're working on your certification. I'm going to hire you now while you're working on that certification, maybe on a part-time role, or I'm going to help support that by paying part of your tuition or something like that to try to speed along that transition coming out from certification and not holding out until somebody gets certified. And I also agree with your observation about robots cooking French fries, because I cooked French fries at one point in my career, and I remember having hot grease splattered on my arms, and it was not fun. So thank you for that overview, and I'm sure we'll probably have some questions about it when we get to the end. So rounding out our third topic, we have a trio of speakers who are Laura Kubishek, venture catalyst at TIE Oregon, and Tammy Marquez Oldham and Noah Brockman, both with SBDC. So first, I would like to introduce Laura. She will be our first speaker in this area. So Laura serves as the venture catalyst for Washington County, aligned with TIE Oregon Foundation as the on-the-ground resource for helping small businesses start up and scale. She meets one-on-one with entrepreneurs, assesses their business needs, coaches them on various aspects of starting and growing a business, as well as connects them to people, programs, and financial capital to help fuel their advancement. Prior to this role, Laura served as a senior executive in marketing, sales, and business development at companies ranging from startups to Fortune 500. She has a BS in chemical engineering and an MBA from Stanford. So Laura, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Debbie. I appreciate it. So let me just pull up my slides. Okay, so thank you so much for the introduction. I'm just going to talk a little bit about my role as a venture catalyst, and then I'm going to pass the torch to my friends at the SBDC. But people might not be familiar with this term, venture catalyst, and I'm a resource for the folks in Tigard and everyone throughout Washington County. So let me explain that just a little bit. So there's a whole infrastructure supporting Oregon's entrepreneurs and the innovation economy. What I do as a venture catalyst is focus on scalable, high growth startups. And what that typically means is tech-enabled startups that are going to give away a piece of their company in order to get money from venture capitalists. So my title is sometimes a bit confusing. Venture capitalists have lots of money to invest in startups. My job as a venture catalyst is I catalyze companies. Unfortunately, I can't give you money, but I have lots of services that I can offer. So I'll share that with you in just a minute. And then in terms of small business assistance, so typically local businesses in the area that are either looking to start a restaurant, start a dry cleaning business, or whatever that might be, starting a local business. The SBDC, as well as, the fine Chamber of Commerce here in Tigard, are available to help those businesses either get started or expand and grow. So that sets the stage in terms of how we service different markets. Specifically in terms of the service that I offer, first let me say that I'm sponsored by some of the cities here in Washington County, as well as the county itself, and Oregon Community Foundation. So all the services that I offer are free to the entrepreneurs. So, and what I try to do is level the playing field for everyone so that everybody has an opportunity to start their business and grow their business. So one of the things that I do to start is meet one-on-one with the entrepreneurs. Before COVID, this was typically at coffee shops. It was a highly caffeinated job, not so much now, but I'll review business plans with the entrepreneur, what's their goals for the company. I will coach and mentor them, as well as connect them to other people, industry experts, functional experts, or suggest programs they might want to participate in. So that's supporting entrepreneurs one-on-one. The other thing I do is offer educational programs. So far, a lot of them have been virtual, no cost, or if I hold them in it at a site, it's typically pretty nominal cost. And I'll hold workshops like on marketing. I'll lead panel discussions on how to attract angel investors to put money into your business, or learning from failure from successful entrepreneurs. And then the third thing I do is look at the infrastructure within cities and also within the county. And I'd love to have conversations with entrepreneurs to say, what is missing in terms of support that you need to grow your business? So it could be, we need a local incubator. They can't travel into Portland, or they need more maker spaces so that they can develop prototype. Then I'll go back to the cities or the county and have a discussion with their economic development teams in terms of how to potentially help fill the gap of infrastructure that's missing. So feel free to contact me if you feel that there's a gap somewhere in services, and I'd be happy to address that. And then the last thing I'd like to mention that I'm very proud of is just being this connector. Oftentimes I'm the initial point of contact for someone looking to start or grow their business, but I work with everyone in what we call the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And it could be incubators or accelerators. It could be people providing financial capital, whether that's equity, buying eventually getting a piece of your company, or debt, getting a loan. Even co-working spaces, you want to get out of the house for a little bit. You're tired of working at home during this COVID period. There's great co-working spaces around town. And the last thing is just additional resources you can go to for education and support. And so I would like to now turn the presentation over to my friends at SBDC, because they have tremendous services to help support small businesses. And again, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address that at the end. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura. That was a good overview of kind of the ecosystem that is out there. And I know a lot of the things I hear from small businesses, it can get kind of complicated and overwhelming in terms of trying to know where to go to like get education or get debt financing or get capital. And so I think having, those resources available and kind of getting a better understanding of how that all works is really helpful. So Laura mentioned she's going to hand it off to the team from SBDC. So I'm going to introduce those two speakers. So Tammy Marquez Oldham is a director at Portland Community College SBDC, and she is substituting for Speaker Molly Moore, who was noted in your e-zine that you were sent. So Tammy brings 30 years of experience in the education, healthcare, software, and food industries to the clients she serves in her capacity at Portland Community College. She's owned several businesses and hired and trained and developed hundreds of employees. She has experience building businesses domestically and internationally, so brings us great experience to her current role. So as the director of the Portland Community College Small Business Development Center and the Oregon Small Business Development Center's Global Trade Center, Tammy leads the vision of providing the highest level of business education and advising possible. Tammy has a bachelor's degree in human development from Warner Pacific College and a master's in business from George Fox. Her associate, Noah Brockman, leads the Oregon SBDC Network's Capital Access Team called CAT, the group that provides strategic business advising to SBDC clients statewide on access to capital, business planning, and financial analysis. So Tammy, please take it away.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you everyone who's presented before me for providing a wonderful context from which to begin our conversation. I'm going to have Noah Brockman present first up, and I'm going to dial back in. I really apologize. Noah, I'm going to transition to you.
Happy to do that, Tammy. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Noah Brockman. I lead the Oregon SBDC Network's Capital Access team. We're part of the resources element of the program today. So I'm taking you right to our website where you can find and access some of these resources. So as Tammy mentioned, the Capital Access team is part of the Oregon SBDC's network, Oregon SBDC Network's statewide services. And as a statewide service, it's something that clients around the state can tap into no matter what part of the state they're in. This program has been around for about 10 years now. And essentially what we do are we're a dedicated team of advisors working with folks on accessing capital for their startup, for their expansion. And lately we've been doing some advising on business exits and how to fund those. So that's been kind of an interesting development the pandemic has brought forward. So a little bit about working with us and what that looks like. The process we take people through, we spend a lot of time in the readiness phase. So, and Laura mentioned this as well, working with folks on their business plans, on their financial projections, and talking about a financial strategy for funding the business, no matter what stage of business it's in, a startup, an expansion, getting things organized, and then helping folks connect with funders, you know, based on whatever the finance strategy is, debt or equity. Now, during the pandemic, things have been obviously not the normal course of business for any of us. So, you know, while we typically might be working with folks on, working capital, accessing lines of credit, expansion, commercial real estate, during the pandemic, we really all had to shift gears. And so we created a new recovery funding page that we try and keep up to date fairly regularly as we identify and learn about new sources of capital that are related to this recovery that we're all in. So we have it organized by region, statewide, and national. And so, for instance, you know, as grant programs by city, county, state come out, we'll post these. And you know, sometimes there isn't a lot of time to respond to some of the programs that come out. So always recommend that people subscribe to our page here. And by doing so, as we update this page with new sources of funding for recovery, folks will get an email to say, hey, we've updated the page, come take a look and see what's new. So that's definitely a resource that I wanted to point out today. How we work and how you can get started with us. So as I mentioned, we have advisors around the state. We have several regions around the state. We're all in region 1 here. So the best way to get started with us is just go to the Start Here page at OregonSBDCCat.org. Click on the inquiry button here for region 1. Fill out your information. We'll get your inquiry. And if you're not signed up as an SBDC client, we'll ask you to sign up. And then we'll just set up like a 30 or 40-minute introductory call to learn more about what your business needs are right now, whether you're trying to grow your business or trying to sort out funding sources that you may need to fund your own recovery. And as Liza mentioned, there's been a huge increase in startups. And we've seen that too on our side as well. Funding for startups, requests for assistance for business acquisition, some commercial real estate for folks who have been in a building for a while and are thinking it makes more sense to buy versus continue to pay a lease. And then just pandemic assistance in general, funding wise for businesses that are still really struggling. We do have some other kind of interesting resource pages that while we have you here, I want to point out. So we put this up a number of years ago. It's a page, it's called the Capital Landscape. And essentially this is I think a good resource for anyone trying to figure out different sources of funding, whether it's debt or equity that they might access to fund their business now or in the future. So, you know, it's kind of like hover over some of these different options, click and get more information. It's just kind of a nice resource. You know, this first top section is traditional stuff that most of us have heard of. And then we kind of get into the more nuanced alternative capital that might also be an option. But as you're thinking about options funding wise, always a good idea to reach out to your advisor, whoever you're working with, or one of us, and get the conversation started. For those of you who are always wanting to kind of track new developments, we have a news page and a Twitter feed that we'll use to get information out about new programs that are being released, or things that we're trying to highlight for different types of clients we work with. Here's some stuff for farmers and ranchers. So if you're on Twitter, you can find us at OR_cat, and you can follow our news feed to just see whatever latest funding sources we're finding and posting to pass along. So kind of in summary, if you're looking for assistance with access to capital, cruise by our Start Here page, send us an inquiry, and we'll follow up and see how we can help. So I want to save some time for Tammy here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go ahead and pass it back to you, Tammy.
Thank you, Noah, and want to thank Jessica for loading up my slides while you were presenting. So Jessica, if we could have those slides, and if you wouldn't mind supporting the presentation from that perspective, that would be very helpful. Thank you. So wanted to transition this presentation, it's about 10 minutes, into the conversation about what do small businesses do with all of the disruptions that they are facing today, with all of the considerations that they need to make, all the way from I had to close my business, now I'm looking to reopen my business, now I'm looking to figure out, do I want to stay in business, and how will this impact my family and the communities that we're serving and our customers? There's so many things for businesses to consider today. And with that in mind, I would say that the most important thing that we can share with you today are the services and resources available. We were talking earlier about the small business ecosystem. It is very supportive for small businesses today. It allows small businesses to find resources easily because you're able to hear from those who are within the ecosystem where those resources are. More information and more resources sometimes is not helpful for small business. So could I have the first slide up, please? Okay, we'll continue on. I think it's really important for me to share with you that the services at the SBDC is related to where the business owner is as an individual. One-on-one advising is offered to small businesses at no cost. Noah mentioned that we are seeing a large amount of startups as did Liza. And we are also experiencing a significantly high number of startups in the work that we are doing. In a normal year for a small business development center, we will work with 500 small businesses. In the last 2 years, each year, we saw 1,178. So what we can say to you is that there is a significant increase in helping pre-venture and startup small businesses today. We can also say to you that the services that we are providing have adapted and adjusted to the businesses based on what they are experiencing. Businesses today are not only in the pre-venture and startup phase, and they're thinking and launching and growing, and they are reinventing and innovating, and they are going on to export and selling to customers outside the United States. They are doing all of those things. But additionally, they are also having to work through where their business condition currently is, reopening and recovery, and building in resiliency, and ensuring that they understand resources sufficiently to redesign their business, to move into a place of adapting through adversity in disruptions that businesses and communities and individuals have never seen before in large amounts. Peter did an excellent job, as did Liza, in sharing with you the many ways in which small businesses are being impacted today, the multiple disruptions caused by the pandemic. So at the SBDC, small businesses have an opportunity to meet one-on-one with their business advisor. The business advisor at no cost will meet them where they are, will help them to understand what the resources are that they need, whether that is looking and seeking out capital, as Noah had provided great information about the capital access team, or they may choose to reframe and readapt and readjust, looking at the business model itself. And that's where business planning is so important. When you're thinking about starting a business, those needs are different than when your business has been shut down and you need to reopen. So we're going to be able to adapt and adjust in all of those different stages. Thank you, Jessica. So when we're looking at the different stages of businesses, as we talked about, and as I think you can see on this slide now, can you go to the next slide, please, Jessica? We're also going to be looking at services that accommodate those different stages. The services such as one-on-one advising I just described to you, but we also have business training. So the business training to start off with is a business design series that helps a small business owner look at how do you start a business and how do I know how to start a business during a pandemic. Then we might be looking at, next slide, please. We might be looking at, okay, I've started my business, but how do I know how to grow and develop my business while also working through the protocols and requirements of a pandemic, and looking at the aspects of reinventing and remodeling my business. Business Builders is an excellent program for that. There you'll meet with other small businesses who are going through very, very similar aspects of what everyone is working through with the disruptions and the economic influences of this pandemic. They're sharing information and ideas, resources, and solutions. They are solution finding together. So it's an excellent training program for this. Next slide, please. And then when you're looking at the more advanced small business, this small business may and is likely to have employees. And along the lines of what Liza was speaking about, you're looking at very significantly different considerations for small business employers today than we've ever looked at before. It's complex. It's attracting small business. Small businesses are attracting employees where employees are very difficult to find. They're having to put forward bonus packages where never before, and Liza spoke to that. All of this is a significant consideration for stabilizing and growing an advanced small business. Planning is absolutely critical, and we have many different tools to help small businesses plan. And the Advanced Small Business Management Program, which is sponsored by the Portland Business Alliance, has scholarships. So small business owners can apply for a scholarship to come into this program. Next slide, please. And then selling to customers outside the United States. I know it's an interesting idea for many small businesses to consider selling to customers outside the United States. However, I'd have you consider that 95% of the population resides there and 75% of all consumers reside there. And many businesses, through their adaptation, are moving from brick and mortar to e-commerce. Makes perfect sense. And so our services at the Global Trade Center, also working within the international trade ecosystem here in Portland, more advanced services like SBA and U.S. Commercial Service and Business Oregon help support small businesses as they're looking to sell to customers outside the United States. Next slide, please. Specialty programs. Many of you may have heard of our Getting Your Recipe to Market program. This program has just celebrated 15 years of operations and has helped more than 500 food entrepreneurs go from idea to commercial ready. It's offered a couple times a year. And it is really an important program for food entrepreneurs to help save time, energy, and resources as they're looking to take their product into the commercial marketplace. We have an abundance of food entrepreneurs who come through this program, and we just had 5 award winners for a local food competition. So we're very happy to share with you about this particular training program. Next slide. Thank you. And with that, I circle back around to Noah, who did an excellent job of supporting this presentation and also providing you with information on the Capital Access team. In closing, I would say the Small Business Development Center is uniquely, provides a unique opportunity for small businesses who are wondering, how do I navigate this very deep and broad resourcing and deep and narrow span of possibilities for my business today? And I would say to those businesses, you're not alone. As Laura said, there are many resources available for small businesses. Catalysts like Laura are there and able to help you triage and understand which resource might be best for you. Our business advisors at the Small Business Development Center also do that and work closely with Laura. So when you're faced with significant challenges, as we all have been through this pandemic, the one thing that I have noticed is everyone is unifying. We are coming together to share resources, to work together, and through that, together we are stronger. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share information with you today. And with that, I will turn things back over for Debbie and questions and answers.
I was having a little tech problem there with more than one screen happening all at the same time. Thank you very much, Tammy and Noah, for that overview of what SBDC does. It's a great resource for our business community. I think hopefully we have some businesses online that may not have known about your resources before, and they'll be checking you out. I think many of our small business resources are kind of secrets within the community unless they're more broadly communicated. So thank you again for participating. So we do have one question that has been submitted so far, and that question would go to Peter. And the question is from Marcia Solberg: is there any hope of reopening the Port of Portland, and wasn't it labor issues that shut it down?
I actually think it is open. I think you're talking about Terminal 6. I think it opened a year and a half, 2 years ago. There's a shipping line from, I think, South Korea or somewhere in Southeast Asia that opened it up initially, and it's grown. I know maritime imports that go through the Port of Portland have grown because of the supply chain issues, specifically in California. So they've moved to some smaller ports, including Port of Portland, and so we've seen kind of like a one-time step up. Not significant, but I believe it opened before that or right around that time. So I not an expert on Port of Portland, but hopefully that at least answers your question.
Great, thank you. Are there any more questions from the audience? If so, please put them in the Q&A function, and we'd be happy to have our panelists answer them. I am not seeing, let's see. Must have done a really great job providing content. The amount of data that we just provided them and they need time to process it. So what I would ask is for all of our panelists, if you're willing, if anybody has follow-up questions for you specifically, if you're willing to do that, to please put your contact information into the chat. And then we can also save that chat, so we'll have a copy of it, but that our participants can also get your contact information if you're willing to share that. So give a few minutes for that to happen. Okay, here's a new question. Is there a particular type of startups that are trending? So that's probably a combination of Laura and maybe Tammy.
I'm happy to respond from an SBDC perspective. We are not seeing a predominance of brick and mortar. I think that makes sense right now. We are seeing technology-based and also e-commerce oriented pre-venture businesses. And interestingly, service-oriented as well. So I'll turn that over to Laura and see what it looks like from her perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. Yeah, I am actually, I gather data in terms of the types of industries, and it's really across the board. It's software, it's hardware, medical devices, and manufacturing. So it's really great to see that there's a broad group of people that are looking to start businesses. But echoing what Tammy just said, certainly there's a high number of people coming up with new apps that are, you can fairly quickly get what we call an MVP, minimum viable product, and get it out there and start testing it. And I would highly recommend that process for people who are looking to start a business. You know, try to get something out there as quickly as possible and get some market feedback, and then decide if you want to continue.
Great, thank you. So we have another question that just came in from Tom Engel. Are there industries or business models that simply won't make it if COVID restrictions continue as they are now, regardless of how many support resources are available?
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that. We are, as you all would probably know, we are seeing a decline in restaurants with most definite certainty. However, we are seeing restaurants reimagined. And so they, as you all know who go out, you can see some of the ways in which they're reimagining. Restaurant industry, hospitality industry, that is going to be a very slow and rough recovery. And many restaurants are choosing for the time being to convert to food trucks. They're keeping their brand going through food trucks and moving that out into public spaces. So there's this really creative flow that's going on with businesses today as they're looking to reimagine themselves. And we have a restaurant business builders program that's helping many restaurants to survive and also to begin thriving again in a new condition or a new model. Laura, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't work with restaurants, but I'm seeing the same thing in terms of what you just described. I think the key is the people need to be flexible and a little bit innovative. I think all the speakers talked about it, that we're seeing a whole lot more innovation, but be willing to try a different business model, because I think there are a lot of businesses thriving. A lot of businesses are coming back now. I can't think right now of one particular industry that's not doing so well, or the model won't work post COVID. But for example, just playing off the restaurant comment that Tammy made, I talked to an entrepreneur who's actually out of Sherwood, and he's coming up with this concept of a mobile restaurant. So you can actually move beyond a food truck. You can actually move the restaurant along with, I think, a set of tables that seats maybe 50 people, and move it to different venues. I think people are looking for experiences. So if you can go to a restaurant, but it's out in a vineyard, or go to a restaurant that's out in the middle of the farmland, that might be a new concept. So I think people are being very creative, and I really commend all these cool ideas that I'm seeing lately.
I'd like to add real quick to what Laura said, and that is, I wrote a guide to business closure over the summer last year. And one of the things I wrote in it is that small business owners may choose to close their business in its current model, only to turn around and open a business that they've had a dream to open for a very long time. And I do think that's happening with small businesses, because the entrepreneurial dream is really, really hard to prevent from being in its natural state. So a small business owner has that natural spirit, and if they are going to close a business, more than likely they're going to open another one.
There's one more thing too I'd like to add, Debbie, if I could, and Lloyd was kind enough to remind me, but I'd like to mention to everyone here that in March 10th, we're holding the West Side Pitch Competition. And so that's for entrepreneurs out there that, are starting a business, or maybe they've started looking to grow, and they're solving big industry problems. And I would just like to encourage anybody listening in to please consider applying. The applications are going to close next Friday, February 4th. And if you are looking for information on that, I put my email address a couple of times in the chat room. And Debbie has my information as well. So please feel free to reach out to me. But I'm super pleased. City of Tigard is a great sponsor for this event, as well as other cities and the county. PGE is also a sponsor, so I'm able to provide first place cash prize of $5,000, second place $2,500, and third place I have an attorney, Buchalter, and they're providing $2,500 worth of attorney support. And I think everyone knows attorneys at times can be quite expensive. And so that's a great prize as well. So again, many thanks to the City of Tigard for stepping up and helping sponsor this event and encouraging everyone. Please participate. And if you don't want to pitch, then please come and attend. It's only $15. We're going to have a local brewery, Vertigo Brewery, providing beer, a local winery, Danu Wines, providing wine. We'll have water, of course. And then graduates of Alante Mujeres, they've got some great food programs. A few folks from there are going to be providing appetizers. So it's really a celebration of entrepreneurship and innovation. So please come and celebrate with us.
I wanted to make mention about the new incubator that's coming in, that for the City of Tigard, that's going to be coming in to the food pod that's going to be coming in from the City of Tigard in 2022. So thank you, Lloyd Purdy, for your leadership in helping to support. And I think Noah might have a couple of words to say about that as well.
Sure, just that, we've had a long-standing partnership with City of Tigard and their Office of Economic Development. And so, for businesses that are wanting to dip their toe into the water there with the food pod incubator, starting a food cart, there's also a strong partnership with the SBDC to help on the advising side. And with access to capital, we've actually been working with a number of startup restaurants, both in terms of bars as well as food carts this year. So I think we'll probably be continuing that work, but we certainly come alongside and partner with our city and county partners throughout Washington County. So keep that in mind if that's of interest.
And I would say, in addition to the Launch Pod incubator, Lloyd Purdy's been leading the way for scholarships for small businesses who would like to participate in training. And so I would say, Lloyd, if Lloyd could put his contact information in the chat, contact Lloyd to find out information about this really unique offering coming from the city of Tigard.
Thank you all. It looks like we actually have a couple more questions that came into the chat. So another question for Peter, knowing that you aren't a port authority, but do you know if Oregon has the same trucking restrictions that we've heard is an issue with ports in LA and Long Beach?
I do not. I do know it's not as big of a logjam at the Port of Portland, just because we don't have the capacity or anything. So it's less of a problem if those restrictions do exist, just because everything's going through the bigger ports. But I do not know the specifics. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. And then we have another question. This is to the entire panel. So what would you say to the business owner who thinks maybe their situation is unique and is unsure if they should reach out to the experts on this panel?
Oh, I mean, I'll just chime in and say, always reach out, right? We're talking about offering free services. Many times I serve as a sounding board to people that are thinking about it. So always reach out to any of us. I would say I'll let the other panelists speak for themselves, but yeah, I love hearing about new ideas and people starting businesses. We can offer frameworks to help you get started. We can offer other resources. So please contact us, but I'll let other folks say.
I would echo what Laura said. We have business planning software. We're working in sales operations, finance, marketing, all of the key elements that a small business owner needs to work within is provided at the Small Business Development Center and our other technical assistance provider partners. If we have a resource need that you have, wonderful. If we don't have that resource, we will know where it is and we'll be able to get you to that resource very, very quickly. Noah, did you want to add anything else?
I'd just say it pays to be proactive and do that kind of outreach. You know, if you can just gain a pearl of wisdom from each conversation you have, I think after you have a few conversations, you've got a string of pearls. And, you know, that can really help to avoid some mistakes and maybe move things along a little easier and a little faster.
Debbie, I wanted to thank Peter and Liza for their presentations, because I think at the heart of everything that we're doing to help small businesses is helping them understand what the economic environment is that they are working within. Sometimes when a business is heads down, they hear the news, they can understand what that's about. But the way in which you presented this presentation today is hugely helpful. And I thank you both for keeping it simple and easy to understand, and yet informative and giving a very holistic perspective. And I learned a lot from listening to you today as well. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you both. I think that I've been doing a lot of reading on the labor market and on the economy, but having the experts talk about it and kind of unpacking the complexities and all of the interdependencies, you know, it's not just one thing. I was kind of in that camp about, well, it's just all the free money and that's why we can't hire people, but that's not the case. And the labor market shortage was coming at us even before the pandemic. So again, I would like to thank all of our panelists for participating. We could not do a program like this without your guys' expertise. And I appreciate you taking the time with us this morning. And I think we'll call it a wrap.
All right. Thank you so much, Debbie, and everyone.